today we are going to be looking at the next bit of Exodus. I sort of really like this bit, but the first bit we're not really reading. And it's basically where God says to Moses and Aaron, go to Pharaoh, and basically he's going to be stubborn. But I'm going to keep doing things. I'm going to show him that I'm God. So that's basically the lead up. And, you know, like Moses and Aaron were like 80 and 83. I mean, that's quite inspiring, I think. Right, so let's read. We're going to read chapter 7, and we're going to read through from verse 8 through to 24. And I'm reading from the ESV version. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, prove yourself by working a miracle, then you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and cast it down before Pharaoh, that it may become a serpent. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron cast down his staff before Pharaoh and his servants, and it became a serpent. Then Pharaoh summoned the wise men and the sorcerers, and the magicians of Egypt also did the same by their secret arts. For each man cast down his staff, and they became serpents. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Still Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he would not listen to them, as the Lord had said. Then the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hardened. He refuses to let the people go. Go to Pharaoh in the morning, as he is going out to the water, and stand on the bank of the Nile to meet him. Take in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent, and you shall say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But so far you have not obeyed. Thus says the Lord, by this you shall know that I am the Lord. Behold, with the staff that is in my hand, I will strike the water that is in the Nile, and I shall turn it to blood. The fish in the Nile shall die, and the Nile will sink, and the Egyptians will grow weary of drinking water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, their canals and their ponds, and all of their pools of water, so that they may become blood, and there shall be blood throughout all of the land of Egypt, even in vessels of wood and in vessels of stone. Moses and Aaron did as the Lord commanded. In the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, he lifted up the staff and struck the water in the Nile, and all the water in the Nile turned to blood. And the fish in the Nile died, and the Nile stank, so that the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile. There was blood throughout all of the land of Egypt, but the magicians of Egypt did the same by their secret arts. So Pharaoh's heart remained hardened, and he would not listen to them. As the Lord had said, Pharaoh turned and went into his house. He did not take even this to his heart. And all the Egyptians dug along the Nile for water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. I'm just going to pray for Simon as he comes this morning. Father God, we just pray, Lord, that your words will be his words, that when we're listening to Simon, we're actually listening to you. And I just pray, Lord, that you open our hearts and our minds, that we can just really understand the depth of what you want to say to us today. Amen.
So there's a big battle about to happen. You can imagine it, can't you? Perhaps we turn our minds back. The England rugby team, the Scotland rugby... No, we won't go there. We don't want to go there, do we? That wasn't good. Unless you're Scottish. Do we have any Scottish people? Half Scottish. Well done. Congratulations. For those of you that don't know, the rugby was on. But also, you know, there's other sort of battles, aren't there? You can imagine some of those battles with the Olympics going on at the moment. Perhaps two ice hockey teams as they prepare for battle. You know, yesterday I saw there was the US versus Denmark on ice. Some of you that might be aware of what's been going on in the world with what the US have wanted, that Denmark owns, sort of thing. It was a battle. You can imagine the two teams before psyching themselves up, thinking this is important. This is the big one. Perhaps Denmark were thinking, we're really going to need a lot of help. We're really going to need a lot of help. We're a bit of the underdogs here because the US, they've got all their power. They've got all their professional players. They've got all their might. We're going to need a lot of help. And you can imagine their coach saying, you can do it. You can do it. You've got to really believe in yourselves. You can do this. You can make Denmark proud of you. They lost. So that illustration didn't work. But it's true, isn't it? When there's a battle going on, when there's two nations or two teams even looking to attack or go up against someone else, it's always the thing, are we big enough? Are we strong enough? Are we mighty enough to beat the other team? And for Israel and for Moses and Aaron, it must have been quite scary because, yes, God had said to them, go into Egypt and do this, but Egypt were the big guys. They were the ones that had all the power. They were the ones that had all the authority. The Israelites in there were just slaves. They couldn't do anything. But Moses and Aaron had God on their side. And they thought, this is going to be it. This is going to be it. We're going to have God on our side and nothing is going to stop us. And so they turn the Nile and all the water into blood. And then the Egyptians just somehow managed to do the same. It must have been tough for them, mustn't it? At one stage thinking, is our God strong enough? Is our God strong enough? Because this is what the Egyptians can do. Is our God really strong enough to rescue all the Israelites? Because nothing seems to be changing the Pharaoh's heart. Nothing seems to be getting through to him. Is our God strong enough? So this battle commences. 10 rounds. For many, it seems like, Pharaoh would throw in the towel at some stage. Eventually, he does seem to throw in the towel after the 10th plague. But then comes back into the fight. It's tough. Pharaoh does not want to lose this battle. But let's think about the plagues for a moment. You can think of blood, gnats and frogs and boils. Perhaps you've got your favourite. I remember seeing a cartoon when I was younger. There was someone that was making sort of Christian cartoons and things, and it was all these Egyptians, and coming down from the sky were all these toasters, and it said the lesser known plague of pop-up toasters. And I thought it was funny when I saw it many years ago. But it's that thing, isn't it? We're aware of the real plagues that there were. There weren't 20, but all these different plagues. And there was a confrontation between God and the Egyptians. But I love the way it was so much more than that. There was this spiritual confrontation going on. For in Egypt, they had a pantheon of gods. They had so many gods that they wanted, or they made sacrifice to, or they made, they bowed down and worship in some way. These gods that they trusted in. It was a bit like, if you can imagine the world of Thomas the Tank Engine, where the characters all have different, the trains all have different characteristics and personalities. For the Egyptians, all these different things, not trains, but these gods with a frog head, or gods that were in control of fish, or these gods that were in control of, they all were these idols that they worshipped. And so I was looking up to see how the plagues went against these gods of Egypt. And some of these are going to be fun to try and read. But anyway, so Khnum was the Nile god, and Hapi, the Nile spirit, Osiris, whose blood Egyptians believed became the Nile's water, and Hat-Mehit was the fish goddess. And so when the Nile turned to blood, some of them would have thought, hang on, what's happened to our gods? What's happened to our Nile gods? And then there was a fog goddess, Heket. So when the fog plague came, they thought, what's happened to our fog god? Lice attacked Acre, the earth god, attacked Khepri, the scarab beetle-headed god. Flies challenged Khepri, the fly god. Livestock death struck Hathor and Ptah, the bull and cow deities. The boils shamed Imhotep, the healing god. Hail defeated Nut, the sky god. Locusts opposed Renenutet, the harvest god. Each plague was against a certain god that the Egyptians had. So important that what God was doing wasn't just random. These were significant plagues. The final two plagues perhaps carried the greatest weight, the greatest theological weight. The first one, darkness over the whole land. And then the final one, death of firstborns. The main god was the sun god, Amun-Ra, Egypt's principal deity. Pharaoh himself was Amun-Ra's son, and Pharaoh's heir, the future god of Egypt. And so this darkness, the sun god, what's happened to our sun god? The death of firstborns, what's happened to Pharaoh? What's happening to Pharaoh's heir? This is all so important for them that was attacking this deliberate attack that God had. The plagues demonstrated that the power of God defeated each god where its locus of power was concentrated. Yeah, God was systematically dismantling Egyptian religious confidence by exposing divine impotence. I love that phrase. By exposing divine impotence precisely in the domains where those gods claimed authority, whether that be fertility or healing or nature or divine kingship. So that's sort of what was happening in these 10 plagues, this big battle. And that's interesting. That's fascinating. That's perhaps useful for a quiz question. But how does it relate to us? How does it relate to us? Well, I think it has a massive challenge for each of us. Because God is great. God is able to do all these things. But I think there's more. For in our world, there are forces, aren't there? There are these impersonal gods with a small g that keep us from being free to worship God. That was the hope of this. The whole plan of these plagues: set my people free so they may worship me, says God. And are there things that are keeping us captive so that we can't fully worship God? It's about idols. Idols, not just those big stone carvings that you might find in the British Museum, but an idol is anything that is a rival to God, an alternative source of authority and trust in our lives. Because idols promise security. They promise fulfillment in exchange for our service. Yep, idols want our service. They are demanding, like Pharaoh was demanding. Timothy Keller has a great book, Counterfeit Gods, and he says, counterfeit gods include anything so central and essential to your life that should you lose it, your life would feel hardly worth living. It's tough, isn't it? What is it that if you lost, your life would be hardly worth living? Sometimes I think for myself it'd be watching sport or eating curry or things like that. But there are bigger things as well, aren't there? There are bigger things that take the place of God's. Charles Spurgeon said, "Little children, keep yourselves from idols." It was the injunction of the loving Apostle John. And he wrote thus in love, because he knew that if God sees us making idols of anything, he will either break our idols or break us. That's Charles Spurgeon, one of the greatest Baptist preachers, said, if you make idols, it's dangerous because God will either break them or break us. John Calvin said, every one of us, even from his mother's womb, is an expert in inventing idols. Yeah, we're good at it. We're good at it. We are wonderful. You think, I'm not a creative person. I couldn't carve an idol. No, we do. We're good at making idols. Anything in our lives that takes the place of God, commands the sacrifice and devotion that belong only to him, is an idol and must be cast out. Idols in the heart are far more dangerous than idols in the temple. Warren Wiersbe. Idols are dangerous. Idols, the Bible uses 3 metaphors to describe how people relate to the idols of their hearts. They love idols, they trust idols, and they obey idols. In Ezekiel 20, for they had rejected my regulations, refused to follow my decrees, and violated my Sabbath days. Their hearts were given to their idols. Yeah, when the hearts are given to idols, what you love most is where your energy goes. And so they rejected regulations, refused to follow the laws and decrees because their hearts were given to idols. Where is your heart given to? In Jeremiah 2:27, to an image carved from a piece of wood, they say, you are my father. To an idol chiseled from a block of stone, they say, you are my mother. They turn their backs on me. But in times of trouble, they cry out to me, come and save us. Who are we trusting? Who are we trusting? Are we trusting in our idols? Or are we trusting in God? In Judges 10, yet you have abandoned me and served other gods. So I will not rescue you anymore, says God. The danger of obeying idols, of putting idols first. So what are your idols? Perhaps what we need to do is we need to follow the trail of our deepest passions. What is your deepest passion? The place or the thing where your time is taken up, where your energy is taken up. The thing that perhaps gives you the greatest anxiety. Because that is where you may have an idol. Now, if that's not God and God things, it's something that's taking your energy away from what should be given to God. It's making you anxious when in God's hands we can have peace. And of course, it's possible to take good things and turn them into ultimate things, good things, and turn them into unhelpful idols. Family, children can become idols. Sex, relationships, work, career, money, possessions, sport, exercise. All these things that are good in their rightful place. But if they become an idol, taking what we should give to God and goes to them, they're dangerous. They're dangerous. They will either, and God will either break them or break us. It's tough. It's tough. Because those things are good, or they can be good, they can never bear the weight of everything. They can never take the rightful place. They can never give you the whole reason for living. They can never fully satisfy. An idol can never fully satisfy. Idols are demanding, always want more. And it's no wonder anxiety is increasing in this country, around the world. Perhaps if people have the idols of popularity, money, career, appearance. Yeah, it's anxious, isn't it? Because when will the plague come? When will the plague come? Whether it's recession, sickness, bereavement, the idol's shortcomings will be exposed. Yeah, so Pharaoh is the one that's trying to hold us, keep us with those idols. For the Egyptians, it was their gods. For the Egyptians, it was their... But for us, Pharaoh is trying to keep us with the idols. And Jesus, I think, wants to say to us, I want to set you free. Because if I set you free, you are free indeed. But there's so many warnings in the Bible. Psalm 135. And those who make idols are just like them, as are all who trust in them. So do we want to say, Lord, I'm not going to trust in those idols. I'm not going to give my heart to those idols. I'm not going to obey those idols. It's interesting. Have you ever thought that there was kindness in the plagues that were sent to the Egyptians? Because it slowly showed them the weakness of their gods. And I love the fact that if we read, I don't know. There's somewhere, you have to find it. You have to find it yourself. Because there's I think in chapter 12, when the people leave, it says, I want to find. There it is. Was it surprising that in the Exodus story, we read Exodus 12:38, a rabble, I love that phrase, a rabble of non-Israelites went with them, along with great flocks and herds of livestock. This rabble had woken up to the fact that their gods were impotent. Their gods had no power. They had woken up and said, I'm going to leave those gods. I'm going to leave those idols. And I'm going to get free. What about you? What about you? Are you willing? In the words again of Timothy Keller, the only way to free ourselves from the destructive influence of counterfeit gods is to turn back to the true one, the living God. He's the only one who, if you find him, can truly fulfill you. And if you fail him, will truly forgive you. That's the God who invites us to turn away from counterfeit gods. This is the one who says, come, don't let Pharaoh intimidate you anymore. The fear of what I will lose. Because when we put God in his rightful place, he gives all these things to us. But God is at the center. God is at the center. So will you let go of those idols? There's a thing called the South Indian monkey trap. And it's very useful if you ever want to catch a monkey. I don't know if you've ever come across that need to catch a monkey. But what you do is you get a coconut, you hang it from a tree. Obviously, I know coconut, but you get this particular coconut, you hang it from a tree. It's got a small hole in it. And inside, you put loads of rice, because monkeys love rice. And they think, oh, this is great. They come round and they climb up this tree. They put their hand in the hole because their hand can fit through the hole. And they grab hold of loads of rice. And their fist can't get out the hole. The only way they can be set free is if they let go. Then they can get out. But these monkeys, they're not very clever. They put in and they hold. And people, if you want to catch a monkey, all you've got to do is go up behind it and catch it. All they've got to do is let go. Are you aware of an idol that you have? A counterfeit God that you've chosen to give your heart to. A counterfeit God that has become more important. A counterfeit God that you have begun to give your heart to. A counterfeit God that takes your attention. A counterfeit God that makes you anxious. Are you willing to let go? Are you willing to let go? Because when we let go, we can go to the living God who gives us, who fulfills us and forgives us. But that's only possible if we let go.